You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Monday. Time to rock out with the old Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you folks are binging these days. Hope you had a great weekend. I won't say a restful weekend. A lot popping off over the weekend. We discussed a lot of it on the option block. Immediately prior to this, yet another reason why you should be listening to the full network. I know there's a lot of crypto hardcores who come in just for the Crypto Rundown, and we're still pretty much the only game in town on the crypto derivative side. We've been doing this for a while. I thought for sure someone else would jump into the waters of crypto vol and skew and derivatives volume, all that kind of fun, but it seems like those are scary waters for most people, but not for us here on the Crypto Rundown. But of course, check out the full network. If you're new to the world of options, you should be checking out shows like Options Bootcamp. That'll help get you up to speed. Of course, the option block for a little bit of education, a lot of activity, unusual activity, all that fun as well. Vol Views every Friday to talk all things vol. The advisors option popping off here or there. This week in futures options. The futures rundown, man, the list goes on and on. The European Market Brief, the newest addition to the network, popping off tomorrow. And of course, if you're ready for it, if you think you can handle it, you can go beyond the velvet rope to the pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. That gets you all sorts of fun stuff, exclusive shows, pro Q&As. We went deep on vol last week with Scott Nations on the old pro Q&A. Options Oddities every Friday, which, spoiler alert, little birdie telling me we'll be joined this Friday on Options Oddities by our good buddy, Mr. Matt Amberson from Orats. He's always got some wild activity he wants to talk about. He also has a wild take on the trades we're seeing and how he'd like to put them up. So definitely you want to stay tuned for Options Oddities on Friday. Of course, the Vol Death Match was in there. Our pro members ask questions, all sorts of fun. TheOptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to get access to that. Of course, live streams, everything else we got cooking over there. Giveaways coming up. Man, we're already almost time to give away the June Pro Trading Crate. My goodness, time flies. Get your name in the hat so you too can win fabulous prizes as we keep on rolling into the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown. I'm going to go just the facts this week, even though a lot of facts to get to, so let's get to it. Of course, a wild weekend from a vol and from a geopolitical perspective. The U.S. getting involved in the conflict between Israel and Iran. A lot of people were worried about that. We saw it pop off over the weekend, and we're seeing some interesting results out there in the market, in the broad equity space right now, after Iran has done what I think the market is pricing in as their retaliation, dropping or shooting some missiles, I should say, at some of our bases in Qatar and some other areas. Pretty minimalist so far, thankfully. So if that's the case, the market pricing in like this is kind of already a done deal, which is kind of interesting. Most of the S&P and the major equity index is up. Vol coming back down to the 20 handle after rallying pretty hard. We saw similar moves out there in the crypto space. It still is an open debate. We might have to have this question again as a question of the week. Exactly what is Bitcoin in the modern era? What is it correlating to? People argued it was digital gold for a while. People argued that it was uncorrelated for a while. People argued it was a high-tech allocation. And at many different times, all of those were correct. And then all of those were deeply incorrect and flawed as well. So maybe at the end of the day, it is just the uncorrelated asset. But right now, it has been moving quite a bit. It was at 108.92 on our show last week. So flirting with that 110,000 level. It topped out last week around 106.4 to end the week on Friday before heading into a tumultuous weekend. Selling off now back down to 103, 196. Puts it down nearly 5,000 handles from the week. 48.96 from our last show. So taking a little bit of a reprieve out there. So if it's digital gold, then maybe not acting the way some folks would expect it to out there. But again, that's what makes it so fascinating and or frustrating for a lot of people. And they're trying to nail down exactly what the hell is Bitcoin in the modern era. Let's break down all the vol and the skew and see if we can find that out for ourselves. Also parse some flow and some of the hot names you folks are using to sling crypto in your portfolio these days, certainly from an options perspective out there. Remember, if you want to crunch all this data for yourselves, Amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. You literally have no excuse now. That GUI that has all this data and is all free. So head on over there, click on the GUI. You can see all this for yourselves. Let's start in the vol land and roll from there, shall we, listeners? Weekly vol, we've been saying for a while, vol in Bitcoin, pretty freaking anemic, I think is the technical term. Bitcoin, which can easily get into the triple digits and usually hovers around at least a 60, if not north of that, is hanging out below a 40 handle right now. Got down to a 36.3 last week on the weekly vol, which is pretty darn light. Ticking up a little bit this week, up to about a 39 on the weekly vol side. Kind of treading water on the more standardized 30-day vol metric. A 39 even on the show last week. Up to a frothy 39.8 right now, so not even breaking a 40 out there on the 30-day vol, which again shows you it's that seasonally quiet period, listeners, from a vol perspective. Even a dust up like this over the weekend doesn't seem like it's shaking Bitcoin vol out of its complacency. Certainly for you folks out there who like to harvest the old risk premium, certainly a time to make sure the juice is worth the squeeze out there. You're getting paid for the risk you're taking on out there. Going out 180 days, that vol coming in 46.3 on the show last week, 45.3. So coming in a full point on the hodler side of the ball. Let's go out to the skew, see if the skew is pricing in any interesting moves or potential surprises on the Bitcoin front. Remember, if you're new to all this stuff, measuring skew here, listeners, are talking about the implied vol of the 25 delta call versus the 25 delta put. If we have a negative number, that means the put has a higher vol. If you have a positive number, it means the call has a higher vol. If all that is Greek to you, quite literally, then head on over to Options Bootcamp. It'll get you started and headed in the right direction. All right, let's go out to the skew right now. It was looking pretty negative, a little bit more negative than it was a week ago on the weekly skew. Last week, it was -1, which anything plus or -1 is pretty much flat to me. It's a -2.1 right now, so dipping down a little bit, which, again, makes some sense. We are looking at an interesting time out there, and Bitcoin obviously has been selling off a bit, so when we see that, we usually see the skew tend to reflect that out there. But again, we're not looking at any sort of dire skew movements. I'm not seeing, -20 or anything crazy like that. We've seen some wild skew numbers popping off out there. Not quite the case out there this week, listeners. If you look back over the weekend just for fun to see how crazy things got on Sunday. A lot of nail biting going on Sunday, listeners. Folks were wondering what was going on. Was this conflict going to escalate? What was Iran really going to do was a big question everyone was asking. So you might expect the skew to get pretty negative there. And the weekly skew got down to not even a -6, -5.84. So that was our nadir for the week and the lowest we've gotten pretty much so far this month. So even with all that going on, listeners, not a heck of a lot of negative bias being priced into the skew right now, which is kind of interesting. So raises the question, what's it going to take to really get the skew looking pretty dire out there right now? 30-day skew, kind of the same story, slightly more negative, but nothing crazy. It was a -1 exactly on the show last week as well. So pretty much the same as our weekly skew and down to a -1 3/4 right now. The Holdler skew, the 6-month skew, we've been talking about that for a while as well. That call premium kind of vanishing, not much juice for the upside right now in the longer term options. That was almost flat, a +0.5, which is the lowest we've seen it in quite some time. This week, ticking up a little bit again, up to 1.25 points. Again, if you know anything about Bitcoin skew, you know that's pretty weak. Historically, you've gotten a lot of premium to sell those out of the money options because the holders want to do nothing but buy them. Maybe right now we're just a little bit exhausted. Either way, not pricing in a heck of a lot of action in either direction right now, which again, it is that summertime season, but we all are living right now in some interesting times from a geopolitical perspective out there. So that might, you think, price in a little bit more action, but right now we're not seeing that. We're also seeing downside in everyone's favorite Bitcoin options play. That is, of course, IBIT. Man, this thing is just lighting the world on fire. It's closing in on VIX right now from an ADV perspective, which is no mean feat. 504,000 contracts a day. That's another 24,000 from this time last week. By the way, IBIT, when we kicked off the show, 58 3/4, down almost $3, about $2 3/4 from this time last week. And today I said the ADV is 504. Throw that in the rearview mirror, already blowing way past that, 531 on the tape right now, listeners. So an action-packed day out there in IBIT. Let's look really quickly and see what folks are diving into and lighting up out there today. Looks like the big dog out there today on over 500,000 contracts already. I mean, you got another hour to go, and it's already over 500,000 contracts. That's a hot day in IBIT. 21,000 of the June 60s. That was the big dog going up out there today. By the way, if you're wondering, they went up for 21 cents. These are, by the way, expiring this Friday. So once again, very weekly heavy call action out here, which has kind of been the name of the game for a while in IBIT. And looks like also 62 is going up for a nickel. It's like somebody might have been bailing on those, though. So actually looks like it could be a bit of a roll down. They went up at the same time. So it looks like somebody rolling down from the 62s, bailing on those for a nickel, and rolling back down to the 60s for 21 cents, which 60 still decently out of the money, about $1.25 as of the start of the show. So think we can hit a 60 handle by the end of the week? Is that worth nearly a quarter for you folks listening? A little bit of a rolling of the bones out there. Either way, 60 is looking hot today. 21,000. Number 2 going out a little farther, which is interesting. Going out to Jan, not of next year, but of 2027, the 50s. So nearly $9 in the money calls, $8.75 to be precise, going all the way out to Jan of 2027. This definitely has the whiff of a stock substitution going up to me out here. Let's see really quickly. What would you pay for a 50, listeners, going out year and a half out there? And I bet it's an eternity in the crypto space right now, listeners. So the 50s, you're probably talking close to 19, 20 bucks, I'm going to guess. Let's see what we got. 1941. Man, the old market maker in me still working out there. 1941, 1935 it seems like where most of them went up out there today. Interesting prices out here. Again, 50s. It looks like some of these went up as rights, which if that's an override, it's pretty aggressive. You're really capping a lot of your upside there. You're thinking IBIT is going nowhere anytime soon for the next year and a half. If it passes prologue, those are probably buys. I need to dig in and find the first. Let's see. Yeah, the earliest one was $20.50. They started printing around there when IBIT was 58.16, so even lower. That makes more sense. They were probably buying these, and they've gotten other prices since. Yeah, which way would you go on those, listeners? Again, that has a whiff of stock substitution. Not a cheap one. I mean, you're going nearly $20 versus $58. But again, there is some time value to that. So you're talking almost $9 worth of intrinsic value there, $8.75. So you're talking $11 and change worth of time value. Is that worth it? If this hangs out here for the next year and a half, which Bitcoin probably won't, that could go the way of the dodo. It can obviously also erode as time goes by. But interesting stuff out here, interesting plays out here in IBIT. And then also July 65s going up 16, almost 17,000 times as well out here. So a lot of disparate paper out here in IBIT, which again, that's what makes it the belle of the ball right now, folks. Can't get enough IBIT. The 65s in July going up. These are expiring on the 11th, by the way. So in the weeklies, also going up for 25 cents. So kind of a pick your poison. 21 cents for the 60s going out this week, or the 65s going out on July 11th, 25 cents. Obviously need a bigger move, but getting more time. Which one appeals to you out here, listeners? You know, it's appealing to a lot of people right now. We talked about this on the option block earlier this week, listeners, was just all the madness around Circle. I mean, we talked about it just an hour ago on the option block, making its way into the top 10 on that show for what I'm going to guess is probably not the last time. Circle, if you haven't been paying attention, listeners, that's the Circle Internet Group. They run USDC, the stablecoin we talk about a lot. They're always a big name on the market cap when we get to the altcoin universe. USDC always hanging out at a pretty lofty market cap out there. Circle manages that. So Circle Internet Group going public this past week, and just a good case of good timing from an IPO perspective. They were initially looking to price it at between $26 and $28. By the way, the ticker is CRCL. If somehow you missed this one, listeners, and you're learning about it for the first time. Been a hot one. They were planning to price the IPO $26 to $28. Ended up going public at $31 a share. By the end of last week, on Friday, it went out at $240.38. 675% increase. That's not alone. The first day, it went up 168%. That was a record price move for a company that went public with at least $1 billion in its IPO, which also, you got to feel for the folks at Circle. These iBankers left a ton of money on the table. They were initially pricing it at $26. It's trading $261.20 right now, up 10x from those initial IPO ranges. So these iBankers, once again, doing a terrible job of determining the market demand for these. I've said it for a while. This is a terrible way to go. And they clearly left a lot of money on the table here. So a lot of people are pointing a lot of fingers at this as being a very broken IPO. I can't say I blame them out there. Imagine if you're Circle and you could have gotten $260 a share, or maybe even $100 or $160 or something in that range. Anything better than what they ended up getting, $31. I mean, obviously the stock rallying, there's some headlines around. There's an argument to be made for that too. But I think at the end of the day, the company wants the money. They kind of got left holding the bag here. But yeah, hot stuff. Circle, another one that's just lighting the world on fire. Also benefiting from some auspicious timing. June 17th is also when the Senate passed the new Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act. My goodness, say that 5 times fast. AKA the Genius Act. It's going to require stablecoins to be backed by liquid assets like the dollar and short-term treasuries, and also going to have to disclose what those holdings are on a regular basis, once a month, I believe. So interesting stuff out there. Obviously not passed yet. Has to go to the House and then has to go to the White House to be signed into law. But that 1-2 punch really seemed to lift Circle, because this thing is on fire yet again today. Like we said, trading $261 right now. The stock popping up, another $21 or 8.75% just today. In terms of paper, it's already averaging 478,000 contracts a day. Again, it's early going out here. The options just went live not that long ago. So read into that ADV with a little bit of a grain of salt, but still the ADV is 234, but we're putting up 500,000 contracts today, listeners. 507,000 to be precise. So that ADV of 234, again, read into that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but probably going to be moving to the upside out there in a little bit if these numbers continue. I mean, you're talking nearly VIX numbers today. What's the big dog out there in Circle today? Well, maybe not the most auspicious for folks who are looking for some more bullish upside, but we got tons of the par puts, the 200 puts expiring this Friday. 51,000 of them have already traded going up today. If that's not far enough out of the money for you, how about the 180 puts also expiring this Friday, going up 25,000 times? And then the par calls, the 300 calls, also trading about 25,000 times. Again, all this paper is opening. This name is a brand new name, so any kind of size paper is going to be new OI. But wow, this is just, they're pricing in or expecting or maybe dreading some wild movements. The 200 puts, the 300 calls, and the 180 puts. And we're hanging out right now at a whopping 261. And again, all these options expire this Friday. So my goodness, that is some serious paper out there. So yeah, somehow if you missed it, listeners, Circle lighting the tape on fire. Let's take a guess. 262 right now. Stock continuing to rally as we're talking. 300 calls expiring this Friday. What would you pay for the privilege of owning such an option, listeners? My goodness. Someone paid, well, the stock was a little higher at 275. That makes maybe a little more sense, but they traded $20.01 this morning. My goodness. And then $19, now trading about $9. My goodness, $20. Basic back of the napkin math, listeners. Circle has to get to 320, obviously, by Friday. I mean, the stock is insane. It could do literally anything, but that is a heck of a lift. My goodness. So if iBit ain't doing it for you, allow me to present the number 2, at least for right now. It's Circle. Will this one stay hot? That's anyone's question, but wild times out here. Speaking of wild times, and a product that used to be solely for degenerates, getting a little bit more action these days. A lot more degenerates out there, clearly, is MSTU. So if MSTR just too boring for you on a levered MSTR, MSTU is your huckleberry. 730 when we kicked off the show, down about $0.50. A wild prints going up last couple of weeks out there, which have kind of been distorting it a little bit. We were talking about 50, 60, 70,000 of these wild in-the-money calls, the DS9 calls going up, nearly 80,000 times last week. So kind of distorting the numbers a little bit. Back to a more normal, dare I say it, about 30-odd thousand contracts on the tape right now. 34,000 to be precise, just added a few thousand more. The ADV is 60,000 a day, up 2,000. That's still a lot for a levered 2X product for degenerates. Looking really quickly, the folks who were slinging all those DS9s, looks like they got the heck out of Dodge. We were talking about them last week, going up for prices around a little over $2, about 210, 212, somewhere in that range. 70, nearly 80,000 times, 215. Looks like they started putting them on the week before. Remember, we talked about that. Nearly 100,000 trading that day, 92,000. Seemed like when we were talking about them last week, we weren't sure if they were giving up the ghost. It seems like that was the case. They were closing last week. So that was a wild time, opening those calls back on June 9th for around 2 3/4 and bailing on them a week later, literally show to show for 220 in that ballpark. So a little over $0.50, hemorrhaging nearly 70, 80,000 times. That'll leave a mark out there. But it seems like most of that OI came in and it went just as quickly. So fascinating stuff out here in MSTU. Have you folks been slinging MSTU, or is it just too wild for most of you folks? I hear you talking about, I should say, see you talking about Circle. Yeah, this is a wild one. This one is just an untamed beast. I mean, the IPO was obviously a disaster, leaving a ton of money on the table. Now, I mean, these calls were trading $20 this morning, and they're weekly par calls. The chat talking about wishing they got into. Yeah, I hear that, but on the other hand, betting on these kind of things and then, 99 times out of 100, that's when your money goes to die out here. You catch fire like this once in a while out there, listeners, but live to fight another day and then see what's lighting up the tape in the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we break down everything else lighting up the crypto tape. outside of the big dog, which is Bitcoin, except for right now when we talk all things market cap. Last week, it cost you about $23 billion to break into the top 10 from a market cap perspective. That got you to our old pal Cardano. This week, Cardano is still hanging out at number 10, but dropping a wee bit down to about $19.5 billion. So again, the rising tide lifts all boats. When that tide drops back down, it tends to lower all boats, including the threshold to break into the top 10. Number 9, our old pal Doge, $23.5 billion with a market cap. Number 8, it's Tron. Gonna go see the new Tron movie this summer, listeners? Tron Coin, hope so. $25.8 billion worth of market cap. Interesting to see if they get any bump when that movie comes out. Number 7, just talking about him, our old pal Circle, aka USDC. $61.5 billion worth of market cap and the number 7 spot. Number 6, it's Solana. $73.8 billion worth of market cap. Number 5 is BNB Coin. 88.75 with a market cap. Number 4, it's XRP, 120.9. Dropping a little bit since we talked about him last week. Don't tell Mr. Bill's wife. She'll be very angry. Number 3, it's Tether, 156 billion with the market cap. Number 2, you know what it is. It's ETH, 277.75. And the big dog still flirting with 2T, if ever so slightly, 2.05 trillion for the big dog, which is good old Bitcoin. Let's get out to ETH, number 2, for a lot of you still in your portfolios, if not your hearts out there. Everyone was all excited on the show last week. 2643 is where we were in ETH land last week. Man, a lot of folks were excited. They were hoping, you know what? Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the moments where ETH is going to regain all the ground that it lost on Solana and Bitcoin over the past year, and certainly this year with just a complete dumpster fire that it was. And going into the weekend, we were still looking pretty good, right around 2560. And then, of course, all this madness unfolded over the weekend. ETH actually sold off to about 2130 on Sunday morning. So I guess glass half full, we are rallying back again now, right? Close to 2300, 2296 when we kicked off the show. That still puts us down about 350 handles, 347 to be precise, from where we were this time last week. So not exactly music to the ears of a lot of ETH bulls. They need every tick to the upside they can get just to make up for the lost ground. I mean, it was losing nearly 50% of its value at one point early this year. The last month and a half, cutting that in half, which has been nice, only down about 25%. And this move is going to add to that, obviously, a little bit. But yeah, ETH doesn't have a lot of downside to give up right now. So every tick down is going to make the ETH bulls squirm. Vol-wise, ETH looking a little bit spicier, a little bit juicier. Remember, we were talking about Bitcoin hanging out below a 40. ETH weekly vol, 77.5. That's up from 71.75 last week. So obviously getting a little bit juicier out there. Also probably means when we're trending down, listeners, and the vol's getting a little bit juicier, that usually means it might be heading towards a little bit of a premium to the puts out there. We'll see when we get to the skew. Last week, the 30-day vol in ETH was a 71. Still hanging out at that level, about a 70.6. So 30-day vol kind of treading water. And the same thing for the 6-month vol, the Hodler vol, 67 on the show last week, a whopping 66.9 this week. So no real evolution there. Let's get out to the skew and see what we're spotting out there. And that's kind of what I expected, especially on the weekly skew front. Last week, we were pretty much flat, positive 0.65, which again, kind of hard to read into too much, a point plus or minus in either direction around 0, listeners. But coming in to start the show today, weekly skew in ETH, not exactly looking optimistic. Almost a -6, -5.8. That's the weakest it's been in a little while. Of course, if you go back to this weekend and see how dire things got on Sunday morning at the nadir of the sell-off, that weekly skew got down to nearly a -11, about a -10.8. So about 5 points higher than it is right now to the downside. So maybe, again, if you're looking for a little bit of glass half full info, there you go. Not quite as negatively biased as it was on Sunday morning. A 30-day skew, +4 last week, -2.1 this week. Again, you could just see from the vol numbers that we were going to see a little bit of negative skew action this week. Going out to the 6-month skew where the holders are hanging out, listeners, +3.2 last week, more than cut in half this week, down to 1.4. So again, looks like the options, at least on the ETH front, not exactly pricing in a heck of a lot of upside in the near term. Maybe not what the ETH bulls want to hear, but that's what the options are telling us. Speaking of not pricing in upside, let's go out to a little bit of Solana action, because Solana also feeling the effects of all this. 157.97, so pretty much 158 on our show last week. 139.03 this week, so down nearly 19 handles on the week, listeners. So just yet another wild week out here for all the major altcoin. Let's see, how low did we get over the weekend? It's like he got down to about 127 yesterday in the nadir. So I know a lot of you have bought sub 150. We're obviously below 150. Some people who talked last time, we got down to around 125, picking some up. I know I re-nibbled around the 125 level, so I'm good right here. But if it keeps selling off, I might pick up a little more, a little bit lower. Maybe, who knows? Maybe my next stop might be 115, maybe par. If we get down to par, might be a different story. We'll see. But right now, I know a lot of you were looking to maybe nibble some more at Solana, so you had your chance over the weekend right around pretty close to that 125 level. Hanging out right now, like we said, right around 139 and change. So again, glass half full. We are rallying a bit from that nadir on Sunday morning. Looking at the vol, there is starting to be more options flow on Solana. Again, with these loftier prices, that's to be expected. So we can start giving you some vol and skew numbers. Going to keep it just to the 30-day for now, because there's not enough flow to really parse weekly and 6 month. But 30-day, we can get a nice healthy number for you. Again, you can see these for yourselves over there at Amberdata.io. 30-day vol, or 30-day sol vol. How about that? The sol vol, 30-day. Has a nice ring to it. Sol vol right now, 76. So again, shows you how low the Bitcoin vol is, but also kind of lining up pretty close to what we're seeing, a little bit spicier than what we're seeing right now in ETH. The skew right now in Solana kind of flat, positive 0.35 going out 30 days. So kind of pricing in a whole heck of a lot of nothing. Let's see if we go out to the Solana skew. How low did we get over the weekend? Again, we don't have a ton of good data, so these are a little bit less liquid. So read into these extremes with a bit of a grain of salt. But over the weekend, we got down to about negative 8.5, it looks like. That was weekly, by the way. So the monthly was negative 2.25. So also that is all flat as well. But you're going to see more extreme moves, obviously, in the weekly skew. All right, let's go out to some of the other altcoin, and then we'll get out of here looking at some of the chat. If you have some questions, feel free to throw them in the chat as well. Let's get out to XRP again. Don't tell Bill's wife, even though she probably already knows. Rough week for XRP. 231 on the show last week, 206 this week, down 25 cents. Again, XRP doesn't have roughly 10% to give up, so a rough week for the XRP fans out there. Doge, nearly 18 cents on the show last week, 17.9 to be precise, 15.7 this week, down a little over 2 cents. Litecoin, 88.16 last week, 82.65 this week, down a little over $5.50. Cardano, 65 cents last week, 55 cents this week, so down a dime. And then we got our old pal Polkadot. Say that 5 times fast, listeners. Our old pal Polkadot, down from 398 on the show last week to 328, so obviously down 70 cents. And everybody's favorite, cover your ears, chat, not going to like it, Shiba Inu, a million zeros, 122. That was last week on the show. This week, 111. So again, giving up the lug nuts on the hubcaps of those Shiba Lambos out there. All right, that's going to do it for this Just the Facts, ma'am, edition of the Crypto Rundown. Just checking again as we're coming into the end of the show. Looks like the rally back on in the broad equity markets, vol continuing to fade out there. We asked you folks last week, by the way, just the general vol impact, listeners, of this Middle East crisis, and whether you think it will extend 30 days or more, at least in the broad equity space. But you could translate that into other markets, obviously, as well. And a little over half of you, about 55%, said yes, it will last more than 30 days. Of course, the conflict taking a significant new turn this past weekend. So we said, will that change your outlook? Yes, it's going to give us more vol or a longer impact. Or yes, it changed my outlook, going to have less vol, less of an impact, or no change, or you're just going to go long some crude and forget the whole thing. And right now, 37.5% of you are saying yes, it's going to have more vol and more of an impact on the market. 25% say less vol and less of an impact, which is interesting. Again, if today's rally and vol crush is to be expected, maybe that is the right play. Once again, fade the Middle East conflict. No change, no impact to your outlook, 25%. And just buy crude, 12.5% out there, listeners. That's going to do it for us, like we said, on this Just the Facts, ma'am, edition of the Crypto Rundown. Back again tomorrow with another wild time on the European front, this time with the European market brief. I'll be joined by our good buddy Dr. Vic /VStocks, as well as some special guests. So stay tuned for all of that fun. Wednesday, of course, our usual doubleheader may be increasing and expanding to a triple header. You might get 2 Options Bootcamp episodes live for all you pro folks on Wednesday, followed by, of course, the Futures Rundown. So a triple header coming at you on Wednesday. Thursday, our usual doubleheader of the option block with our good buddy, the Flow Master, and This Week in Futures Options. What special guests will join us there? You got to tune in to find out. Friday, of course, Volatility Views. We will be joined by our good buddy, Dr. Vix, again, as well as the Oracle of New Hampshire doing double duty on Vol Views, and then back again one final time exclusively for you cool kids hanging out in the secret club. He'll be joining me on Options Oddities to talk all the weird and wild and wondrous paper. He's big on these momentum plays right now as well, so probably has a few things to say about this circle trade, I'd imagine, out here. So stay tuned for that. Should be a good time. If you haven't joined us in the pro yet, what are you waiting for? The optionsinsider.com/pro. We're also ticking down. The calendar is ticking. You have one more week to get your name in the hat for the June Pro Trading Crate. Trust me, you want to win one of these at least once in your trading career. Otherwise, dare I say it, it will be incomplete. The rest of you have a good rest of your trading day. See you back here tomorrow for the European market brief and all the rest of that great content till we're back here again next Monday. Another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.